Hey, what's up everybody? Anyextee here. Welcome to the Adept Expeditions YouTube channel. Please subscribe now for more videos investigating the ancient mysteries and history, as well as interviews with experts like this one. I have a very informative video for you. This video is part of a series of interviews that I held with Yousef Awyan. If you are not already familiar with Yousef, you may know his father, Abdel Hakim Awyan, from the film Pyramid Code or from the works of Stephen Mailer. We have discussed Hakim and the discipline of chematology in a number of videos here on this channel before. Yousef continues to perpetuate some of his father's teachings today via the Khemit school, and Yousef is a stonemason himself and a musician. So he really understands the mechanics of stonework, something he practices at the Khemit shop, where admittedly he uses power tools.
And we definitely don't use copper chisels to carve it, but we use diamond tip tools and power tools.
Yousef also has a very deep comprehension and feel for music and is skilled in several instruments. And as someone who grew up experiencing not only his father's teachings, but also someone who has traveled with the likes of Dr. Robert Schoch and Christopher Dunn, from geology to Lost Technology, Yousef brings an interesting perspective. Now, as a disclaimer, although personally I don't agree with everything that the Khemit school perpetuates, nor do I agree with all of its proponents, I do think everyone has a voice and deserves to be heard, and much of what Yousef talks about in this interview resonates with my own understanding and the things that I've learned from my mentor, John Anthony West, as well as my Rosicrucian studies. This interview is the second segment in a series interviewing Yousef Awyan. If you have not already checked out the first video, I recommend watching that one before this one, as it provides an introduction to the Khemit shop where this interview was filmed. I spent a significant amount of time with Yousef interviewing him, and I've enjoyed my time with him. I will be uploading more segments from time to time. I literally have hours of footage interviewing Yousef, and I have conducted this interview, as I mentioned, in the Khemit shop, where stoneworks are made available, some of which are imported from Upper Egypt, others are actually handcrafted by Yousef and his family members. This interview was conducted while I was hanging out with Yousef in the Khemit shop on a day where I was actually leading a tour group that was honoring and commemorating his father Hakim. And I wanted to make this interview publicly available for several reasons. We discussed the four canopic jaws, and Yousef explains how the meaning could have been lost through labeling. This is something his father often posited in his teaching about labels. Yousef also talks about the way of the priests and how forces of nature are hidden in other subjects. We also touch upon the power and design of the pyramids, such as the cosmic energy to activations, which can be felt without logic. As Yousef explains, it's something that you can feel. And so we'll be going deeper into this in future videos, as this relates to the sacred science, which is essentially the high wisdom of the ancient Egyptians that, again, my mentor, John Anthony West, has written extensively about, as well as R.A. Schwaller-de-Lubitsch.
Expert, he worked with John Anthony West. Sacred science, I mean, they did not separate spirituality and the physical. So in other words, everything was a spiritual experience. They understood vibration, they understood metaphysics and physics.
It's definitely metaphysical.
But this is superior engineering. Superior engineering. And that's why it took a master like Chris Dunn to recognize it.
Chris Dunn is the master craftsman and engineer responsible for developing the Giza power plant theory, and his pioneering work on Lost Technologies have no doubt inspired the ancient advanced technology movement, further perpetuated by chematology and Yousef today. With this foundation as a basis, the teachings of his father and what he has learned from touring with geologists such as Dr. Robert Schoch and Susan Moore, Yousef has been able to look at his place of birth in a new light. And his experience working with stone and skill set as a musician contributes to his own insights and understanding. Yousef also explains how he believes the Egyptologists are focusing on clay pottery, ignoring or dismissing the ancient stone vessels in an attempt to avoid the uncomfortable topic of ancient advanced technology. These vessels are some of the finest examples of evidence of lost technology or lost technique in ancient Egypt, going all the way back to the pre-dynastic period.
I can't believe this one or that. Now, that is the dynastic period. Those are the pre-dynastic period.
Some of these stonewares have not been found in any of the later dynastic eras in Egypt, yet they are flawlessly finished and polished, some with wafer-thin edges, exhibiting exceptional craftsmanship, an advanced skill or technique that was somehow lost in antiquity. It would be a remarkable feat if accomplished with clay, but some of these artifacts are produced with hard stone, such as granite, where copper tools would fail to make a simple dent. What's truly astonishing is a vast wealth of over 40,000 stone jars, plates, and vases of every imaginable size, shape, and material, most of which, unfortunately, were damaged due to subsidence of earth, were discovered below the Djoser Step Pyramid Complex at Saqqara, which, according to the traditional timeline, is the oldest pyramid in Egypt, the first one to be built. And yet, many of these vessels were produced by earlier dynasties. There can be no question that some of them date to the pre-dynastic Nabta culture, which goes back centuries before the standard timeline for dynastic Egypt, and thus predates the site where they were discovered. The ancient stone vases in the Cairo Egyptian Museum would be difficult to duplicate today, even with our sophisticated machinery and 3D printers, let alone primitive tools. In the interest of fairness, efforts have been made to try to replicate them. But as you can see here in this video, to which I'll leave a link for you in the description below, as usual, the process takes a very long time, and modern replicas never come close to the original in terms of elegance and precision. In addition to the stone vases, blue faience tiles were discovered below the Djoser Pyramid Complex. Here's an example that you can see in the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum in San Jose, California. A lot of people talk about the vases in the Cairo Museum, but these blue faience glazed tiles constitute another anomaly. What isn't well known is that these blue tiles could play an important role in rewriting the standard chronology. Australian archaeologist John Dayton challenged the standard timeline when he published a study in 1978 entitled Minerals, Metals, Glazing, and Man, where his compelling argument indicates that this glazing and many other crafts attributed to Egypt were not invented there, but rather in Central Europe and were brought to Egypt during the Hittite invasions. He believes the tiles were set in the Sayyid dynasties between the 8th and 6th centuries BC, when repairs and renovations were carried out. He points out how glazing of this type was unknown in Egypt in the 3rd dynasty, when the Step Pyramid was allegedly built.
This is the Step Pyramid, the first stone in the world, maybe 40,700 BC.
When considering the faience tiles and the craftsmanship of the vases, we are confronted with a bit of a mystery, one that could have grave consequences for the narrative of Egypt's origins. But in order for that to happen, we need to take a closer look and ask deeper questions. These stonewares show unmistakable tool marks. When we take a close look at the center of this plate, the angle of the cut changes rapidly, producing a near-perfect circular line, likely made by the tip of a cutting tool. The stonewares in the Cairo Museum is something that was first brought to my attention by my mentor, John Anthony West, while studying under him in Egypt nearly a decade ago. But it's interesting to hear Yousef's take. And finally, Yousef will discuss what he thinks is a big mistake with the official Egyptian timeline, and how one of the clues can be found at the rarely seen site of Toshka. Now, Toshka is a Nubian site south of Aswan, one that I am particularly interested in, and you will see why as this interview unfolds.
So we were saying the canopic jars is a set of 4 pieces, and they are usually famous to be the ones that hold the organs of the body during mummification, but they actually have another understanding for it. They were representing the 4 cardinal directions. So the jackal here is not Anubis, and this baboon here is not Thoth, and this falcon here is not Horus. They have different names. This jackal is called the Dua motif. Dua means the star. Mut means the mother. Mutar, mother. The star of his mother, or the mother star. Misty, which is the baboon. He's not Jahuti. Khef Hasluf. And Heb. They represented the four cardinal directions.
The term canopic reflects a mistake in Egyptology. Early Egyptologists erroneously associated it with the Greek legend of Canopus, a Greek boat captain who, during his voyage to the city of Troy, was buried at Canopus in the Delta, where he was worshipped in the form of a jar. These jars were used during the mummification process to preserve the viscera of the owner in the afterlife. I detail this process in an educational video series that I produced and narrated for the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum in San Jose, California. You can find this video on the official YouTube channel of the Rosicrucian Order Amorg. It is interesting to note how a recent excavation that took place in 2020 at Saqqara revealed a 2,600-year-old undisturbed tomb. Inside the tomb, hidden behind a stone wall, 6 canopic jars were discovered, breaking the typical tradition of 4. We discussed the symbolic importance of the number 4 in my video explaining the so-called Dendera light bulb, to which I'll leave a link for you in the description below. It is worth placing further emphasis on the point Yousef makes here about another understanding for the canopic jars as being associated with the 4 cardinal points. And this is well established in Egyptology. The canopic jars were also known as the 4 sons of Horus. Dua Motef, in the form of a jackal, contained the stomach and was also associated with the east. Imsiti, in human form, houses the liver, representing the south. Hubisenef, the falcon-headed deity, protected the intestines and was the neter associated with the west. Hapi, in baboon form, preserved the lungs and represented the north.
So lots of the information or knowledge or wisdom that used to be talking about the forces of nature, the neter, was hidden or deciphered into other subjects. And this is the way of the priest, to hide the information within other stories. Or sometimes take the names of powerful elements and put them in another story. So when you are following the symbol to lead you to the truth, it will take you to another story and misinform you about your direction. For example, lots of things happened when the Greek civilization and the Egyptian civilization blended together, and they copied and took from some of the things. For example, there is the Beno bird. The Beno bird is a form of energy that is coming from the sun, and it enters the pyramid to what's known as the Holy of Holies of the pyramid itself, which is called Het Benbenet, the place of the Benben. The Benben stone, which is the pyramidal shape. And when this ray or when this energy enters the Benben, it activates the shape. And then the spirit, which can be understood as an energy field of the atom, which is the complete or the first creation that came to be, will rise above the Benben or above the pyramidian shape. So when you want to follow the story, what is the Benu bird? It was taken as the phoenix in the Greek mythology. So instead of following what's the meaning of this bird, what it used to symbolize as some kind of the energy of the sun, then you will find yourself searching about the phoenix and resurrecting from the ash, a totally different story. So that's, sometimes it happens maybe by coincidence, but we are sure that the priest used to twist the information in order for them to keep the information, and let the others just talk about other things, thinking that they are knowing the truth.
This would be like the Hanut, right?
Hanut, exactly. And the 4 Canop jars also used to represent another thing that we don't have much information about, which is the 4 pillars of heaven. That's another thing. And thinking of heaven is not something religious only, especially in the ancient Egyptian civilization. But we all understand how the power of design of the pyramid absorbs or attracts the cosmic energy and the cosmic radio and all these activations that still exist in the Egyptian side. So, inshallah, when you visit more and energize more, even without logic explanation, you will feel it. You will feed from it, and you will come back to feed from it again. Yeah.
So Richard, what do you think about your experience first time in the pyramid with the Adept Expeditions crew on the Esoteric Egypt tour?
There's no words. I felt the presence I've never felt before. I felt lighter than I've ever felt before. There's no words to say how many ways it's affected me. I really appreciate this. Anyone who has a chance to go on this tour should sign up right now.
Just a brief reminder and a quick invitation here that if you want to feel it yourself, if you want to experience Egypt firsthand, you are invited to join us for the Lost Technologies and Symbolism tour taking place this September. I will be leading this tour along with my colleague, master craftsman and engineer, Christopher Dunn, who has been mentioned in this video, the best-selling author behind Giza power plant theory and Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. You can learn more about joining Christopher Dunn and I for this incredible adventure of a lifetime at adeptexpeditions.com. We only have a few spaces left, so if you're interested in joining this tour, now is the time to register and sign up, as we anticipate it selling out in the near future. You can learn more about future tours at adeptexpeditions.com as well. But for now, let's get back into the interview with Yousef.
What brought you to the understanding the alternative explanation for the camp, Jaws? Because obviously Egyptology has one view, but
It's written.
yeah,
It's in the official story, but they focus on something. Same like the pre-dynastic time. They always focus on the pottery and they always dismiss the stone vessels, because the stone vessels leads to the understanding of the ancient advanced technology that the dynastic Egyptians didn't document or didn't have its tool, like the tube drills and the materials and establishing the quarry system. So they focused on what they can explain, how they made the pottery by hand or something like that. But they never focused on how did they gather tens of different types of very solid types of stones and how did they manufacture it. I'm sure you have seen some of these vessels today. There is, in the entry of the museum, right to right hand, there is a showcase that shows little vessels from pottery. Half of it is brown and half of it is black. This is from the era that labeled as the pre-dynastic. And it was made by hand before they figure out the idea of the pottery. Side by side with vessels made from stone that has very, very complicated shapes that will challenge us today in how to make it that fine with this smoothness and with this like long neck and an empty ball in the end. How can you enter the tool? Or curves, you feel like it was just built, but it's not. We have slate and milky quartz and amethyst and corundum and you have Susan Moore, of course, who will tell you about it.
the four cardinal directions. Do you suppose so? There's a connection with the the four organs that go into the jars. Do you think there's some connection with the four organs?
I don't think so.
No.
I think they just took a nether, a force of nature,
Yeah.
to twist it into mummification. Because for many Egyptologists, they believe mummification is a mystery. And what's the big mystery about it? It's about death. As my father, God bless his soul, used to teach us, always be aware of labeling. Because when they label something, that means they are going around it. And they give us many examples. Freedom, justice. If you labeled some king like Usr Ma'at Ra, Seti bin Ra, the famous name of Ramses II, the powerful justice of Ra. When you're going to mention the word justice? When there is injustice. When you're going to be using the label freedom? When there is no freedom. So, when you find the pyramid and everything around it is about life forces of nature, it's aligned with the coordinate direction, and the power of design. There is water running in it, sound resonance, electromagnetic, bio, all these powerful forces of nature are in the pyramid complex. And then the only mythology that is talking about the pyramids is the myth of creation. In the primordial ocean had a wave, and then the primordial mound came to appearance, the first form, and then Atom, the first creature, where of course all the other religions, Adam is Atom, it's the first creature, it means the complete, and then the Ben stone, which is the pyramidal shape. It's all about the myth of creation, so it's all about life. And then they label it as a tomb, death. So this is the misinformation. Just with a simple label will make you go in a different direction if you are researching. What is it? And then you go to the sound and light show, and the first thing they tell you, this is the tomb of chaos. Okay, where is chaos? Have you seen his statue today in the Egyptian Museum? That thing. And it was found in a totally different area called the Qom Sultan, and all the experts know that it's from the 26th dynasty. So that's at least 2,000 years later, if we follow the academic timeline. Also the timelines, and there is a lot that need to be. The timeline that was given by the Egyptian priest who lived around 300 BC, Manetho, who gathered the information to give it to Ptolemaeus, gave him a timeline that goes back to 30,000 years BC. The academics said that he was exaggerating, but how can we judge? He had the access to all the libraries that used to have all the scrolls of papyrus in different temples, especially the one in Un, which is Heliopolis today, that is totally covered with new buildings. You hardly can see all the layer in some places, and give lists for the kings that ruled and how many years and everything, and labeled what we know as the union of Na'armer, that plate that you saw today with the two lines, and he said this is labeled it as the second reunion. That means there was a first reunion. So they shrink the timeline into 3,300, but some other resources agreed or supported what we had passed down from Manetho, which is radiocarbon dating. When Manetho was talking about the Middle Kingdom, which is labeled as the Middle Kingdom, to the academics it's 2,100 BC. Manetho said it was 3,400, 3,600 BC. When they took some samples from that era and analyzed it with carbon-14, radiocarbon 14, they found out that it goes with the timeline of Manetho, 3,400 BC. That's for the Middle Kingdom. For the Archaic Age, which is the first and the second dynasty, they had also the same test. The official timeline is around 3,100. The Manetho timeline is 5,600 BC. And also radiocarbon dating supported what Manetho said. So there is a mistake, again, with the timeline that they are giving us. But it's all connected together through the different areas. So some, if you're going to be visiting the Nubian Museum in Aswan. Yes, if you are going to this museum, I don't know if you are going on this itinerary or not, but it has some, there is people who made research from American universities here in an area called the Toshkan. They don't have the artifacts, but they have some photos, and it's in a museum, so it doesn't get more official than that. And they did radiocarbon dating for the site, and it was between 12 and 14,000 years ago. So
They recently took the Nabta Playa stones and put them in the Aswan Museum, right? Is that right?
I think it's in the Nubian Museum.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? It's Anyextee, and today we're coming to you live from the Aswan Nubian Museum. And behind me, you can see some stones here in the distance. And of course, the famous Nabta Playa stones, which were originally in the Western Desert, required special permission, a permit to get out there they've actually been moved. It was the last few years or so that they moved them from the Western Desert to the Nubian Museum here in Aswan. So you can see that they're believed to be older than Stonehenge. They've been referred to as cylindrical, although that may be a misnomer. They carry hypothetically solar and lunar alignments. There's been a lot of research on this. Several different researchers have posited different theories. You can look into that more if you like, but just wanted to give you a close-up view of the Nabta Playa stones. So here they are. And for me personally, it's a little bit of a conflict. I think it's, on one side, it's unfortunate that they've been moved from their original location because we don't know their actual intent. It's sort of like moving the obelisks away from the temples themselves. We don't know what sort of magic that may have retained. However, on the other side, it's great for scientific study. We don't have to go through the perils of the Western Desert to see the Nabta Playa stones. They're right here at the Nubian Museum for scientific research. So there it is, a lot smaller than many of you may think. As you can see, I'm standing here for scale. They're very small. Standing here. Yeah, right in the distance, real small. And there's also some other stones here as well. Were found in the cow stone. This is thought to represent the cow. See that? The head, the back. This was also found, this cow-like crude sculpture made of sandstone, also found at Nabta Playa in the Western Desert. All right, so these are all the stones from the Western Desert. Again, there's Nabta Playa. I'm gonna go inside the Nubian Museum and check out the artifacts. I'll check you guys out later. Thanks for watching.